It's March 21st, and you know what that means in South Africa, right?
Oh, absolutely. A date etched in the national memory.
It's the 65th anniversary of the Sharpeville Massacre.
A truly pivotal moment.
It really was pivotal in the long fight against apartheid, and I think, it's just striking how that history casts such a long shadow,
Oh.
without a doubt, on the
Yep.
present.
Yeah.
Because today, against that really powerful historical backdrop,
Yeah.
we're diving into a situation that's evolving quickly.
Mhm.
And it's significant. The increasingly tense diplomatic relationship between South Africa and the U.S.
It's fascinating how this anniversary, marking this brutal act of oppression,
Right.
and then the international resistance that it galvanized.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how a nation forged in that struggle for self-determination.
Right.
How it navigates its dealings with global powers.
Decades later.
Decades later. Yeah,
It
exactly.
has to play a role.
That historical consciousness is always there.
I think so. And that's really what we're going to try to untangle today.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to unpack all the layers of these escalating tensions between the U.S. and South Africa.
Right.
Understand who the key players are, and get a sense of what this could all mean for South Africa going forward.
Absolutely.
We've got some really compelling sources for this deep dive,
Yeah.
pointing to what seems like a real inflection point.
Yeah, a turning point.
Turning point in U.S.-South Africa relations.
For sure.
And it all seems to have been sparked by a pretty dramatic move.
Earlier this month.
Earlier this month.
Yeah, you're talking about the expulsion of South Africa's ambassador to the U.S., Ibrahim Rasool.
Exactly.
It's a significant diplomatic action.
Huge.
And as you said, it's the immediate trigger for this whole situation that we're exploring today.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio declared Ambassador Rasool persona non grata.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Why would a seasoned diplomat like Rasool,
Right.
someone with such deep roots in the anti-apartheid movement,
Exactly.
essentially be asked to leave the country like this?
Well, at the core of it, according to Secretary Rubio's statement, it revolves around some pretty serious accusations.
Yeah.
Accusations of, quote, race baiting and harboring animosity towards President Trump and the United States.
Wow, so these are serious charges.
They are at the diplomatic level. These are very serious charges.
And, I mean, these accusations weren't just pulled out of a hat, right?
Right.
There was a specific context,
There's a context.
some particular remarks that seem to lead to this.
Exactly. The accusations stem from comments Ambassador Rasool made during a webinar
Okay.
hosted by MISTRA. That's the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection.
Right.
In that discussion, he offered a critique of the Trump administration's Make America Great Again movement.
Okay.
And what's really striking is how he characterized it not just as a political slogan,
Right.
but, and I quote, as a white supremacist response
Wow.
to the changing demographics within the United States.
Those are strong words.
Very strong words.
Carrying a lot of weight.
Oh, absolutely. You can see how those comments could immediately escalate tensions.
Yeah, you can see how that would lead to problems.
For sure.
And it sounds like these remarks weren't just made in a vacuum.
No, they gained traction.
They did.
Conservative U.S. media outlets,
Okay.
Breitbart being a notable example,
Right.
significantly amplified Ambassador Rasool's remarks.
Right.
This widespread attention, it likely played a key role in bringing his comments to the forefront.
Right. To everyone's attention.
Yeah, and probably influencing the decision to declare him persona non grata.
It really highlights how interconnected global communication is these days.
Oh, it's instantaneous.
And how quickly opinions expressed in one forum
Yeah,
can have international repercussions.
huge repercussions.
So the result, as we know, is Ambassador Rasool being declared persona non grata by Secretary Rubio, reportedly via social media platform X,
Wow.
with a deadline to depart the U.S. by today, March 21st.
Really brings it back full circle for the anniversary.
It does feel like a new low point, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
Yeah.
Our sources suggest this is an unprecedented move in recent U.S.-South Africa relations.
Wow.
A notable downturn compared to diplomatic interactions,
Yeah.
even in the early post-apartheid years.
Yeah. So really a low point.
Yeah, it indicates a breakdown in diplomatic norms
Right.
and trust at a high level.
What's been really noteworthy, though, is the reaction within South Africa.
Yeah.
Our sources point to a rather unusual display of unity
Yeah.
across the political landscape in response to Ambassador Rasool's expulsion.
Yes, this rare convergence of voices
Right.
on a day already so symbolic.
Yeah.
The Sharpeville anniversary.
Crazy.
It is quite telling.
Yeah.
It suggests that regardless of the usual domestic political divides,
Right.
There's a deeply shared sensitivity when it comes to perceived threats
Yeah.
to national dignity and sovereignty.
So it's not about left or right.
No.
It's about South Africa.
It's about South Africa. Yeah.
We saw prominent figures from across the political spectrum speaking out. Let's start with Julius Malema,
Okay.
the leader of the EFF. What was his reaction to all of this?
Malema delivered a strong condemnation of the U.S. action,
Okay.
characterizing it as a direct affront to South Africa's dignity. He urged President Ramaphosa to stand firm against any U.S. pressure.
Wow.
Interestingly, he specifically called out former President Trump in his remarks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this raises a question about the extent to which personal relationships and historical grievances might be influencing the current dynamic.
Yeah, those personal relationships always seem to matter more than we think.
They do.
Don't they?
Yeah, they really do.
Especially on the world stage.
Especially in diplomacy, yeah, for sure.
And he didn't stop there, did he?
No, he didn't.
There was also mention of a potential future U.S. ambassador that seemed to feel even more concerned.
Right. The EFF specifically highlighted the rumored potential appointment of Joel Pollak as the next U.S. ambassador to South Africa, given Pollak's history as a right-wing commentator and a former speechwriter for Trump. The EFF interpreted this as further evidence of a hostile stance from Washington.
It seems like they're saying this is just the beginning.
Yeah, it suggests a concern not just about the current action, but also about the potential direction of future U.S. policy.
Like, who are you sending next?
Exactly.
If this is who you're thinking of sending.
Yeah, exactly.
What does that tell us?
What are your intentions exactly?
Yeah. Let's move over to Herman Mashaba of Action SA, a party with a very different ideological perspective.
Yeah, very different.
Did he echo the same kind of sentiment?
He did, although perhaps with a slightly different emphasis. Mashaba stressed the critical importance of South Africa, asserting its independence in its foreign policy decisions. He cautioned against yielding to U.S. pressure, explicitly linking this to safeguarding the nation's economic and political autonomy.
So for him, it's about self-determination.
It is. For Mashaba, the focus seems to be on the principle of national self-determination in a broader sense.
Regardless of who the players are.
Yeah, just this idea of South Africa charting its own course.
Making its own decisions.
Exactly.
And Ace Magoshul, a figure with his own complex political history.
A long history.
He also weighed in.
He did.
What was his perspective?
Magoshul, representing the African Congress for Transformation, or ACT, echoed the sentiment that the expulsion constituted an attack on our sovereignty. He drew a direct line from this event to the historical struggles against external domination.
Wow, so we're going all the way back.
Yes, suggesting a continuity in the need to resist what he perceives as undue foreign influence. Reminiscent of the anti-apartheid struggle itself.
Yeah, like we've been here before.
Exactly. We know this game.
And we know how to play it.
Yeah.
It's really striking how these often opposing voices found common ground in their reaction to the U.S. move.
It really is.
It really underscores how sensitive this issue of national pride and sovereignty is in South Africa.
Deeply sensitive, yeah.
Cutting across those typical political lines.
It's a unifying factor.
But as our sources indicate, Ambassador Rasool's expulsion wasn't an isolated incident. This seems to be more like a boiling over of some pre-existing tensions that have been brewing.
Precisely. The expulsion acted as a catalyst, bringing to the surface that underlying friction that has been simmering since President Trump's return to office.
In January 2020.
January 2025.
So there are several key areas where the policy stances and global orientations of South Africa and the U.S. have increasingly diverged.
It's been a growing rift.
So let's delve into those specific areas of disagreement. What are the main points of contention that have been creating this friction?
Well, South Africa's policies regarding land reform have been a persistent point of contention. The U.S. has voiced concerns, particularly regarding the Expropriation Act, viewing it as potentially discriminatory and harmful to property rights.
Then you have South Africa's decision to file a genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice.
A move that has clearly been met with significant disapproval.
From the U.S. administration.
Yeah, the U.S. has made its position very clear on that.
And beyond these kind of domestic and legal policy choices, it seems like South Africa's relationships with other nations are also a source of tension.
Absolutely. South Africa's strengthening ties with countries like Russia and Iran are definitely viewed with concern in Washington.
Right.
These relationships are often seen as running counter to U.S. strategic interests in various regions.
Well, and it all kind of comes back to this idea that South Africa wants to be non-aligned in this increasingly polarized world.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, South Africa's commitment to a non-aligned foreign policy is increasingly being tested in what many perceive as a more polarized global environment.
You can't be friends with everyone, it seems.
It's getting harder and harder to walk that tightrope.
Our sources also point to an earlier instance of strain in the relationship, even before Ambassador Rasool's controversial remarks.
Yes, in early 2025, the Trump administration made the decision to cut nearly $440 million in aid to South Africa.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, a significant portion of this funding was allocated to critical HIV/AIDS programs.
Right.
The stated justification at the time was directly linked to the U.S. concerns surrounding the Expropriation Act and its potential impact on white farmers.
Okay, so that particular policy has been a recurring sticking point.
It has been a thorn in the side of the relationship for a while now.
Yeah, it seems like Ambassador Rasool's comments were maybe the final straw.
Yeah, the tipping point.
Exacerbating these existing tensions, rooted in these disagreements over land reform, international legal actions. South Africa's broader geopolitical alignments.
Absolutely.
And then you layer on those earlier aid cuts.
Yeah, it's a complex web.
It's a lot.
It is.
So let's consider the broader context in which all of this is playing out.
Right.
South Africa isn't operating in isolation.
No country does.
Domestically, South Africa is governed by a government of national unity formed in 2024.
Yeah.
So this coalition faces the complex task of balancing the nation's economic realities.
Yeah.
Its significant trade relationship with the U.S. as its second largest export market is a key factor.
You can't ignore that.
With its desire to maintain an independent and non-aligned stance on the global stage.
Right. It's walking a tightrope.
It's a delicate balancing act with those significant domestic political considerations.
Absolutely.
And on the international stage, South Africa holds a prominent position this year.
It does indeed.
Doesn't it?
South Africa assumed the presidency of the G20 in 2025.
Wow, the G20.
Yeah.
So that elevates its international profile significantly.
It's hugely.
It provides a platform.
A global platform.
To articulate its perspectives on global issues, including its advocacy for reforms to the global financial system and its active participation within the BRICS economic bloc.
So it's a chance for South Africa to really exert its influence on the world stage. But
this increased visibility also brings greater scrutiny from Western powers.
Particularly regarding its relationships with countries like Russia and China.
Right. It's almost like you can't win.
It's a difficult position to be in.
It really brings us back to that united front we witnessed on Sharpeville Day.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about reacting to Ambassador Rasool's expulsion.
No, it felt bigger than that.
It felt like a more profound statement about South Africa's role and place in the world.
Exactly. The unified response from opposition leaders on such a historically charged day sent a powerful message.
Yeah.
It linked the historical struggle for liberation
and
the achievement of self-determination with the current geopolitical realities. Signaling a unified national stance against what is perceived as external interference.
It's like, we're not going to be pushed around.
Exactly.
We've been through that.
We know how that feels.
We're not doing that again.
Yeah.
Now let's look at the official government response.
Okay.
President Ramaphosa's administration seems to have adopted a somewhat different approach.
Yeah.
A bit more measured.
Compared to the more vocal opposition leaders.
That's an important distinction.
Right.
President Ramaphosa's government did publicly label Ambassador Rasool's expulsion as, quote, regrettable. However, their official response has been notably more measured, emphasizing a commitment to engaging with the U.S. through established diplomatic channels.
Okay, so trying to keep those lines of communication open.
Exactly. The stated goal is to preserve what they have described as a mutually beneficial relationship.
So a more cautious and diplomatic tone from the executive branch.
Yeah, trying to smooth things over a bit. while the opposition voices offered those much stronger condemnations.
Yeah, fire and brimstone.
Right, but it highlights a potential difference in strategy.
It does.
Maybe balancing the need to express that national sentiment with the imperative of maintaining those important international relationships.
You need both. You need to stand up for yourself,
right,
but you also need to be pragmatic.
You can't just burn all your bridges.
Exactly.
But even with this more tempered official response, the fact that so many opposition leaders from across the political spectrum spoke out so forcefully,
it's hard to ignore that,
underscores that there is a significant underlying national sentiment that views the U.S. action as a step too far.
Yeah, an overreach.
An overreach in diplomatic relations.
They push too far.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this.
Okay.
What are the key insights to take away from this deep dive into the escalating tensions between the U.S. and South Africa?
Firstly, it's crucial to understand that these tensions are not solely about Ambassador Rasool's specific remarks.
Okay.
They are a culmination of various interconnected factors, differing ideological viewpoints on governance and social issues,
right,
concrete policy disagreements, and fundamentally different perspectives on global alliances and international relations.
So it's not just one thing.
It's a whole bunch of things coming together at a very specific moment.
And the timing of all of this, coinciding with the anniversary of the Sharpeville massacre, really underscores the weight and significance of this moment.
Absolutely. The timing is no coincidence in terms of the symbolism.
It's heavy.
It highlights the deep-seated value that South Africa places on its national sovereignty and its right to chart its own course.
Right.
Principles deeply rooted in its history and the struggle against apartheid.
Right.
This historical context is vital for grasping the intensity of the reaction to perceived external pressure.
They're saying, don't tell us what to do.
Exactly. We've been down that road before.
We've already fought that fight.
And we won.
Right.
We're not going back.
It also brings into sharp focus the incredibly delicate balancing act
that's a tough one.
that South Africa is currently navigating on the world stage.
Precisely. The nation is striving to balance its significant economic ties with the United States.
Right, because that's still a huge factor.
Huge economic partner.
With its aspiration to pursue an independent foreign policy.
Right.
And to align with other nations in ways that it believes best serve its own interests.
It's about agency.
And its vision for a multipolar world.
Yeah, a world where power is more distributed.
This situation carries potential consequences.
Oh, absolutely.
Not only for the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and South Africa.
Yeah, that's definitely at stake.
But also for South Africa's broader influence.
And its role in global affairs.
So as we reflect on this convergence, a historic anniversary marking a profound struggle for liberation, unfolding alongside a significant diplomatic clash with a major global power.
Yeah, it's a pivotal moment.
It really prompts a crucial question.
What's that?
Considering South Africa's long and hard-won journey to liberation, and its current position in an increasingly complex and multipolar world.
A multipolar world.
How might this particular moment redefine its relationship with global superpowers like the United States in the years to come?
It's a question worth pondering.
It really compels us to consider the enduring power of historical memory, the resilience of national identity, and the ever-shifting landscape of contemporary geopolitics.
It's a fascinating and complex situation.
It really is.
With far-reaching implications.
Well, we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
We will indeed.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Into this complex situation.
A real pleasure.
We'll be back soon to unpack another piece of the global puzzle.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay informed and stay engaged.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.